What's up, book nerds? My name is Tara, and this is my review of a book that I have been wanting to read forever. I've had forever, and I finally read it, and that is Cinder by Marissa Meyer. This review will be a spoiler-free review because I know there are many of you out there who may be on the fence about this series like I am, and you might want to hear a different point of view about the novel to help you make that decision about if you want to read it or not. Now, I must say that the reason I probably would not have picked this book up otherwise is because it doesn't really sound like something that would be of interest to me. I'm not really into fairy tale retellings, and while I do love a good cyborg, this to me seemed more like just it was going to be focused more on the romance or on other things besides like the science fiction-y part of things. But everybody said the same thing, that they had no interest in reading it, but once they did, they were really glad they did. So I thought maybe I will be like everyone else and I will just fall in love with this book. Well, unfortunately, I did not fall in love with this book. I did end up giving it 3 out of 5 stars because there were parts of it that were an entertaining read. I would call it a little bit fluffy. I didn't find a lot of the substance or unique qualities that I look for in a 4 and 5 star read. So the biggest thing for me about why this book didn't really warrant a 5-star rating is because there's just nothing in it that was particularly compelling for me. I was expecting to be blown away with something very unique, and it just wasn't there. And I think that what happened with this is that Marissa Meyer really had a big task. I mean, it's Cinderella, so to put a very new spin on Cinderella is not an easy task to do because we all kind of know that basic plot line. And unfortunately, I don't really feel like, you know, maybe she had a little sprinkle of some cyborg in there to make it feel unique, but ultimately the heart of the story did not feel unique to me. I felt at times like reading it, especially in the first 100 pages, was work. I was assigning myself to read this, to cross it off of a list, and that may have something to do with my personal reading experience, so do take this all with a grain of salt. And thinking about it now, I finished it maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. I don't really remember much about the story, which is the mark for me of something that fell flat. I don't want to completely lay into the story because there were some things that I liked. I did generally like Cinder. She's a likable character, which is not always the best basis because I also really liked Queen Lavanna and she's not a likable character, but I liked that she's not likable, though I imagine that she ends up being very one-dimensional throughout the series. I liked Cinder. I wanted her to be happy and succeed, and I found her cyborg struggle to be very interesting. I also liked that the romance was a little more downplayed in the story than I was expecting. I was expecting it to be very heavy on the like sort of meet cute and then this build of like some sort of insta-lovey thing. And that did not happen, so kudos to Marissa Meyer for kind of taming it down a little bit. I don't know, maybe I was just expecting a lot and anything was going to fall short of that. But what I didn't like was Kai, who is our prince, and he is what you imagine when you're beginning the book to be the love interest. And he just, you know, he's dealing with some stuff. There's a plague going around the city and he's the prince, and so he's got some politics to deal with. But I didn't feel like I really got to know him, even though I do feel like I got to know him a little bit better than some of the love interests in other stories that I've read. I never connected with him as a character because there was a certain depth that seemed to be left out of the story. So then when it comes to feelings between the two of them, I didn't quite buy into that either. And I won't go into any detail about exactly what those feelings are or how that resolves or where that goes, but I will say that that was not what was compelling me to read the story, so that really wasn't the part that was going to make or break the book for me, though it did tend to be slightly more on the positive side because I was okay with this portrayal. So what you have to know going into Cinder is that it is part of a series that is going to continue. The later books are also fairy tale retellings of like Rapunzel and Scarlet, the Little Red Riding Hood, and then Winter, I think, is supposed to be Snow White. That's the 4th book in the series, and I believe the last one. So you're not going to get a sense of finality after reading this book because there are greater sort of political issues at play, and you were getting snapshots. It's not a series that continues with Cinder as the main character, but she is going to appear throughout those stories as the greater story is told. So I am not really going to be continuing on with the series. There are a lot better books out there that are a better use of my time. And from what I hear, the 2nd book, the protagonist in that one is not particularly likable, so I don't even want to put myself through that. But it's not going to say that I regret reading this one. It is so popular in the world. I mean, in the book blogosphere, I see it a lot on Instagram, I see it in BookTube, and honestly, my students, when I was a librarian, this is the exact kind of thing that I find them loving. They are not the critical old lady that I am. So I don't know how helpful of a review that is for anyone, but that's the reasons behind that 3-star rating that I did mention in my April wrap-up. So if you have other thoughts, or if you think I'm terribly wrong, or that I just didn't read this book right, or didn't understand it, or you agree with me and you don't get what the hype is about, leave those thoughts for me in the comments. Though try to be spoiler-free, because this is a spoiler-free review, and there are maybe people who haven't read the book, especially because I kind of pitched at the beginning that I'm doing this for people who might be on the fence about reading it. So maybe you can sway them back to the other side by telling them how amazing it is, and that I am just an old lady who can't read anything and enjoy it anymore because I've just read too many YA books and nothing can surprise me anymore. So those are my thoughts on Cinder. That's all for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. What is the difference between magical realism and urban fantasy? I know that I like magical realism, and I know that I tend to not like urban fantasy, so for me there must be some sort of a difference. But what is the difference, and where is that line? Bear with me here as I struggle to articulate my thoughts. So I eventually was able to break this down